Dark Elves are one of those races left in the dust. When Warhammer 3 came out, they were reworked, broken, and left to rot until they hopefully get a DLC one day. Nevertheless, there are some diamonds in this turd sandwich of a race, so to find them, let's rank every Dark Elf faction from worst to best. But if you want this and all future videos ad-free, then consider becoming a member for just $1 a month. Now, let's get started with Malekith. Starting off, his faction effects are exceedingly dull. All he really has going for him that's good is reduced upkeep for a range of units you'll make use of for the entire campaign. Aside from that, the extra relations and allegiance points with Dark Elves is just whatever. Maybe, and this is a big maybe, he can roll that into confederating them or making a Giga Alliance, but chances are they'll be infighting like crazy anyway, so fat chance of this getting you any value whatsoever. Extra loyalty for new recruits is neat and all, but nothing all that engaging. Of course, Malekith starts in the Dark Elf capital of Naggarond, and in the immediate vicinity, he's got Skaven, Chaos, Dwarves, and plenty of other Dark Elves. Like I said, even with his improved relations, chances are you'll be going against your own. In my opinion, Dark Elves don't have the greatest roster, so may struggle against most of these enemies depending on what exactly they're bringing. Still, he has a massive earnings potential from trading, so it could be a whole lot worse. His Lord effects are nothing to shout about either. Control and construction cost reduction locally are fine, but let's be honest, most of the time he'll be away from home and battling, so gets limited use out of this aside from when capturing new settlements. Reduced enemy leadership is actually pretty significant, but overall not the most exciting or impactful effect to bring into battle. His unique skills are a choice between a range of campaign buffs both locally and faction-wide, or huge buffs for his own army, and some scraps for everyone else. Both sides are decent, but the army buffs make him into a real powerhouse battle leader. It may not affect stats all that much, but the loot from battling will be insane. Speaking of which, in battle he's a decent all-rounder, but not immediately great at anything. Before he gets his dragon, he lacks armor piercing, but maintains good melee stats, so does okay on the front lines. With the dragon, he's a real high damage terror, with the slight downside of being a bit big. Add on to this is Lore of Dark Magic, which is good but not great, and he ends up in a pretty powerful place after a relatively underwhelming start. As for why I put him in last place, honestly Malekith just doesn't have a lot going for him. He's kind of a basic bitch without much really wrong, but also nothing making him all that powerful. The friendship with Dark Elves will be shaky at best, and whilst upkeep is nice to reduce, it doesn't really change the game, especially once your economy gets on a roll. It's a similar story in battle. Nothing bad, but nothing all that exceptional either. It could really have gone either way between Malekith and the next Lord, but in the end I put him last, since he does nothing that the others don't do better, or at the very least more interestingly. In 5th place we have Mom Marathi. At the very least, Marathi has a gimmick, offering her something unique to everyone else. Her Slaaneshi affiliation causes her to spread their corruption wherever she goes, and benefit her faction with bonus income. On top of that, she can make use of a range of Slaanesh units from basic demonettes, all the way to the Keeper of Secrets. Why faction select says just demonettes is beyond me, because it is in fact way better than it sounds. Slaanesh aside, she can build sorcery buildings and use hero actions for cheaper, which is fine. Saving money is never a bad thing, but these are relatively niche things to save on, so won't add up to a tremendously large amount over the course of a campaign. The ancient city of Quintex is way down on the southern border of Naggaroth, with the Lizardmen only a short trip away. Right out the gate you're against other Dark Elves, but there's no shortage of potential enemies with Lizards, High Elves, Wood Elves, Skaven and more right on your doorstep. This can be a very challenging start, but it also comes with a lot of freedom. Suitable climates are in every direction, so it all really depends on who you want to fight. That said, they might all decide they want to fight you at once, so be prepared for wars on many fronts. As for battle effects, she has no battle effects. The buffs for the sacrifice to Hecate is neat and all, but isn't really something that benefits her army specifically. Bonus XP and magic for sorceresses is honestly great, no complaints about that one. I just don't get why it's listed as a lord effect. Increasing the loyalty of other lords in the region is funny, but will it really come in all that useful in the long run? Probably not. Similar to Malekith, she has a choice of unique skill lines, and it's a little bit more mixed. You choose in between 2 sets of buffs for her army and faction, so it all depends what you want. Stat boosts and hero buffs, or loot and replenishment. There's more besides this, but overall it's a strong selection of decent effects. In battle, she's primarily a range with a mix of the laws of death, dark magic, and shadows. Outside of spells, she has high damage and okay melee stats, but poor armor, making her a bit of a glass cannon. If you compare her to a normal supreme sorceress on a dragon, then she really looks pretty weak. So why 5th place? As I said, Marathi could have been in last, but I decided to let her be on top of Malekith just this once. Her Slaaneshi gimmick is exactly that, but the ability to use some of their most powerful units is very cool and can be very strong if you really lean into it. The use of corruption for extra cash is nice and helps make your lands a little less welcoming to outsiders. However, outside of her Slaanesh affiliation, her location is challenging and she doesn't have any real impact on her faction as a leader. Her battle prowess is outdone by generic lords, and she offers nothing outside of her skill tree to her own army, so it's pretty underwhelming. She has a fun gimmick, but sadly, not much aside from that. In 4th place, we have Malus Darkblade. Malus' faction really does revolve around the man himself and what side of him you want to focus on during your campaign. The tug of war between his demonic Zarkan side and the Dark Elf can heavily buff himself and his army, or ensure stability depending on your preference. He can also make use of the right of the War Master to summon powerful armies of beasts if he needs even more firepower, or he can gift settlements to Malekith in exchange for heroes. The Whispers from the Demon can offer some fun side quests for various rewards if you are so inclined, but nothing game changing. Demon aside, he can make a massive amount of gold from mines and quarries, so it's well worth taking any settlement with one of these to collect quite a pile of gold. He can also choose to control both his new expedition and Hag Grief, or sell his foothold in Naggarond for a large sum. Speaking of which, his expedition lands him outside of Black Rock up in the Chaos Wastes. This means he's battling through tides of various flavors of chaos for the majority of the game, no matter what direction he chooses. If you keep Hag Grief, you'll also be against the same enemies as Malekith, since you are directly below him. Chaos isn't really the worst matchup for the roster of Malus, and as you'll see, not really much can slow down the man himself. Another lord with battle effects oriented around one type of unit, so you'd better lean into them if you want to feel any effects. Cold ones in their various Dark Elf forms are okay, but in my opinion, cold ones in all forms are kind of a little bit undertuned. Notice how I said opinion. Wow, what a concept. Making them cheaper to recruit and upkeep is neat and all, since making them cheaper inherently increases their value. I just make sure you're comfortable using them, as they are difficult to get a lot of value out of. Lastly, immunity to chaos attrition is pretty useful, especially considering where he starts, but since it only benefits his army, it means any others in the faction, good luck. His unique skills focus on either his Dark Elf or demonic side, so bring powerful effects no matter which you choose. Both make him even more devastating in combat, and that really is the aim of the game as this guy. He can easily be a one-man army in full demon form, so that would be my recommendation, but no matter what, you have a strong choice of buffs for him, and even a little for everybody else. In combat, he might be the most powerful fighter in the game once he gets going. He starts out strong with fantastic stats across the board and armor piercing. The mount is great and all for even more speed and damage at the cost of being a little bit bigger, but the really broken part is Zarkan. He can get to 1 HP and transform into Zarkan to get a whole new health bar, lifesteal, and enhanced stats. He's absolutely crazy once you put all your skills into combat, and you'll struggle to find an equal anywhere on the map. Now, if we were ranking lords based on how well they would do in combat, we all know this guy would top the charts. However, outside of the one-man army thing, he's kind of a kick in the ass to play. Demonic Possession is fun, but wreaks havoc on the faction if left unchecked, meaning constant costs to keep it under control. The Chaos Wastes are full of people looking to pick a fight with you, so you never get a break, and if you keep Hag Grief, that's 2 fronts to keep an eye on. All of the armies in his faction can't abuse his absurd power, so end up feeling like spectators in comparison to him. He's extremely challenging, and when you're not using his army, that challenge can sometimes be too much for the rest of his effects to handle. Coming in 3rd place, we have Crone Hellbron. For faction effects and mechanics, she's really all about 2 things: collecting and sacrificing voluntary workers. Of course, she has her Death Knights and Blood Voyagers, allowing you to sacrifice voluntary workers for a range of powerful faction effects, mainly aimed at her brand of units. Extra captives post-battle and a reduced cost for one of your rights is great, and means you can keep your faction full of voluntary workers ready to be used however needed, and providing a boost to your economy just by existing. Her unique right, the Sacrifice Dredgekira, is yet more bonuses to Death Hags and Witch Elf units, alongside giving her a great boost against the High Elves. Lastly, an increased capacity for Death Hags right out the gate is cool, I guess. They're not terrible, but of all the heroes I'd want to spam in my armies, they're not particularly high up the list. On the northern tip of Naggaroth sits Hageneth, where Crone makes her home. She's on the border between the Dark Elves and Chaos, so will end up going against a lot of Norska, warriors, and demons of various chaos. It can be pretty challenging, especially if Siggy makes his way over. The main goal is of course to take the fight to the High Elves, so just secure your borders as best you can and pray they hold for the duration of your voyage. Again, in battle she has a strong focus, so if you lean into that, it's actually pretty impactful. Increasing the weapon strength and reducing the upkeep of some fairly high damage output units is a pretty nice boost that can make a real difference in combat. Should you be using these units as your main damage dealers in a faction with Shades and Giant Hydras is another question entirely. But as I said, if you lean into these effects, you can have a cheap army dealing a massive amount of damage. Would you believe it if I told you her unique skills provide even more buffs for that same group of units? There's also some buffs for herself, abilities, and some faction bonuses to captives and voluntary workers, so overall pretty top notch. In battle, she's a high damage melee battler with just a smidge of high risk with the low armor and resistance. In her final form on the Cauldron of Blood, she's still strong, backs more like an aura powerhouse with some light ranged power than a major damage dealer. She does sacrifice a lot of melee power for these auras, so you do have to decide which you want to be, but either is decently strong, though not anything crazy. This might seem like an insane ranking, but I really do believe Crone is better than Malice, and it's for one reason: consistency. Her Blood Voyage brings buffs to her entire faction, not just her army. That means when things are going well, they're going well for everyone instead of just one guy. Sure, her brand of units may not be the greatest, but they get the job done, especially when you stack all their buffs at once. If she can take the fight to the High Elves, she can really start cooking with gas, though that voyage may prove quite the challenge. As I said, in battle she's good but not great, so no real complaints here. She's held back from being any higher simply because her effects aren't as powerful or reliable as the others. Coming in second place we have Lokir Felheart. His campaign really revolves around ports and black arcs. It's a simple mechanic, but getting a new one for every port you own allows him to rapidly become a real threat on the waters and more of a pirate lord than any of the Vampire Coast. Add on the bonus income from voluntary workers, and he can generate an insane amount of income from ports and raiding in no time. Add on the reliance on Corsairs and the ability to upgrade them and Charybdis units through the sacrifice to Anathema, and he can field some truly terrifying seaborne armies. The Right also brings some great buffs to the rest of his faction, so is a very strong addition if he can maintain it. He starts out over on the east coast of Cathay, so pretty damn far from home. He's surrounded by Cathay, Undead and eventual Lizardmen, and Chaos and Skaven depending which direction you travel. It's mostly minor factions, so not too terribly challenging too fast, but you'll quickly be up against big players, so it can ramp up quickly. That said, you can also dip through the sea lanes to anywhere you want, giving you a lot of freedom right out the gate. There is just about room to bring Black Arcs inland with you depending on where you go, so you can maintain their buffing power for quite a while. His Lord effects lean him even further into that pirate playstyle. Reduced upkeep and causing fear for all Black Arc Corsairs makes them stupidly cheap and extremely effective in combat. The immunity to sea attrition isn't the most exciting, but does let him embrace that playstyle to the fullest, so is a nice option to have even if you don't make use of it all that much. His unique skill line is more buffs for Black Arc Corsairs and Black Arcs themselves, so very focused but also very strong. In combat, he's quite possibly one of the best raw battlers in the game. He's a straightforward melee fighter with no spells, no real abilities or range to speak of, and in his base form he has great melee stats, high armor, and decent non-armor piercing anti-infantry damage. Once he's on a dragon, he does drop some defenses but gains a ton of armor piercing, making him a real terror anywhere on the battlefield. This may seem like an insane spot for Lokir, but I got two words for you: Black Arcs. These ships are truly devastating and offer insane power to your armies with recruitment and support aplenty. The terrain nearby allows them to make use of this power for a very long time, especially if you just want to play the Pirate Lord and raid the coastline on cooldown. His reliance on lower tier units lets him keep them relevant far longer than they should be, and it helps that the man himself is a pretty devastating battler. I can understand the argument for putting him lower, but for me, the Black Arcs bring so much value that I think it justifies him climbing the ranks. But of course, that means in first place we have Rakarth. He might take the cake in not just the race, but maybe in the game, for how much value you can get out of his mechanic with such little effort. So, every time you battle, or raid, or exist close to beasts and monsters, there's a chance you'll capture some of them to your beast pens. These can then be recruited into your armies, and the icing on the cake is, all of this has reduced upkeep. This allows you to fill your armies with endgame monsters like Hydras, Carnosaurs, and Mammoths extremely early in the game, allowing you to stomp most enemies with ease. Add on a lack of vigor penalties when raiding, and you can do all this, farm gold and soften up provinces with nothing that the enemy can do about it. It's so simple, but also so simply strong. He starts on the west coast of Lustria, so he's got the Lustria Bowl to look forward to once he makes his way inland. That means lizards, Skaven, Chaos, and more, but none of it will be any match for his legion of monsters. If anything, it's just giving him more ammunition to throw right back at them. Would it surprise you to learn that Rakarth also focuses on monsters in his own army? If you don't have enough in the beast pens, you can recruit them from the usual way even faster, and all monsters in his army gain increased defense, which is likely the stat most of them will struggle with. His unique skills bring buffs to monsters, monster adjacent units, and increasing his chances of capturing monsters. What's not to love? Get more monsters and make them even better, alongside a side of a general boost for the army in the campaign. In combat, he's a pretty respectable fighter, though nothing all that crazy. Good stats and damage right out the gates and a choice of mounts for a choice of playstyles. He's really more of an army leader than a major battler, with abilities to aid his monsters during combat and enhance their power even further. He's really not bad, in fact I'd even say he's good, but with his army, I really doubt he'll ever be the star of the show. Rakarth got first place mainly because of just how broken the monster pens mechanic is. His armies are constantly capturing monsters to fill their armies with endgame units that they have no business using. This lets him steamroll anyone and everyone through sheer force, as no one can really do anything about the units he's fielding so early in the game. If you spec all of your armies around monsters, you will never have to make use of anything else. Now, sure, it may be a little bit expensive, but when you can walk through anything put in front of you, you'll find the gold to pay for it in no time. Everything else in his faction really doesn't matter, to be honest. He could probably start at war with everyone and come out to the other side unscathed. A truly insane faction with a broken mechanic since the start. May it last forever. But what I want to know is, who do you think is the best Dark Elf Lord? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Warhammer 3 rankings, then check out this video all about the Chaos Dwarves.